Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you all panelists for being here. I want to do a few introductions, introduce our panelists, talk a bit about what we're going to be talking about, and then we're going to jump right in. So we're going to go in alphabetical order, which first we have Aditya, Aditya Ann, I imagine in school you went first all the time, basically. You got both first and last. Aditya Ann is the Senior Director of Enterprise AI Governance at CIBC, where he leads AI governance and risk management activities for the bank. Aditya joined CIBC in 2020 as a data scientist working on machine learning models for marketing teams before shifting his focus in the past 2 years to AI governance and managing AI-related risks for CIBC. Welcome, Aditya. So next we have Aimee Park. Aimee is the Director of Academic Collaborations and Programs, Artificial Intelligence, and Digital Healthcare at Roche in the Global Informatics Division. As part of the AI and digital healthcare team, she is responsible for developing and implementing impactful collaborations and partnerships with academic institutions and promotes Roche's presence in the academic community. Welcome, Aimee. Next, we have Dr. Marcus Brubaker, a research scientist at Google DeepMind and whose work at York University focuses on computer vision and machine learning. He's also a faculty affiliate of the Vector Institute and a status-only faculty member at the University of Toronto. Previously, he worked as a visiting professor at the Samsung AI Center in Toronto and a research director at Borealis AI. He co-founded Structura Biotechnology and has been involved with a number of startups. Welcome, Marcus. And last but definitely not least is Patricia Thaine, who is the co-founder and CEO of Private AI, a Microsoft-backed startup who raised their Series A led by the BDC. Private AI was named a 2023 Technology Pioneer by the World Economic Forum and a Gartner Cool Vendor. Patricia was on Maclean Magazine's Power List 2024 for being one of the top 100 Canadians shaping the country. She is also a computer science PhD candidate at the University of Toronto and a Vector Institute alumna. Welcome, Patricia. Okay, so before we get right into the discussion, I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to be speaking about today on this panel. So, mid-October, Vector is going to be releasing a report alongside the Conference Board of Canada that looks at AI skills changes over the past 5 years and some of the current trends in the market for AI talent. I'm going to talk about some of these highlights now, and then we're also going to talk about them in the questions with our panelists here today. So one of the first highlights I want to talk about, and there's many more, so please do read the report when it comes out mid-October. One of the first things we'll talk about is changes in AI job demand for different types of roles over the past 5 years. So the report notes that certain roles over that period of time have increased in demand, such as data scientists or technical product managers, while as other roles have seen a decline in demand on their side, such as software developers and software engineers. So we're going to talk a bit about that as an insight. There's also, what we're going to talk about in the report speaks about, is companies that were interviewed saying that they receive many applications for their job postings. However, a lot of the applications that they receive could be defined as AI enthusiasts or people trying to break in with the hype, not what they would define as qualified candidates. In other words, not the people in this room that are affiliated with Vector. So we're going to talk a bit about that insight and what you can do to stand out. The report also notes that startups and scale-ups tend to look for more seasoned hires on their teams, noting that unlike some of the very large organizations that have a lot of different team members in this space, they don't have the same capacity to train or develop up internally junior data scientists or junior folks in this field from that side. So we'll talk a bit about that. We're going to talk about AI governance and ethics. The report notes that over the past 5 years, the number of jobs in this space is small, but it's grown a lot. 26% to be exact from the report, and so we'll talk a bit about that side of things. And lastly, the report says how important non-technical skills are. Maybe that's not a groundbreaking. We're going to delve into that a bit more, though. A few examples that the report talks about is the need for a problem-solving or engineering mindset to be able to see these models and troubleshoot. Talk about business acumen, so understanding what's the return on investment for some of these systems, how does it impact the customers, as well as domain knowledge and communication. We will get right into all those things. Who's excited? Okay, there's a lot of excitement. You're excited. Yeah. All right, so let's start off with our first question, open to everyone here. What we said, or said a little earlier, the report talks about that changing demand for AI roles. So what's increasing, what's decreasing, talks specifically about data scientists and technical product managers, for example, as some that have increase in demand. Software engineers, software developers on the other side, a decrease in demand. So I'm curious for the panelists here today, which roles in your organizations are becoming increasingly important in your development of AI? And let's start with Aditya.
All right, good morning, everyone. It is really bright in here, so I'm going to squint a little bit. To answer this question, the roles that you see on LinkedIn or any other job sites would or should match the maturity of that organization or those organizations that are posting those roles, right? So it's basically the roles have to be aligned to where that organization is in terms of how it's adopting AI. So, you know, if organizations have just started their AI adoption, then you would see maybe the data scientist roles kind of being more popular. But if the organizations are now shifting from experimentation and POCs and then, you know, going into production, then you would see more of MLOps engineers and ML engineers, right? And then obviously now with the whole emphasis on responsible AI and AI safety, you would also see roles around AI governance. So it all depends on, you know, where that organization is in its adoption and maturity curve. And with us and, you know, banking sector, a lot of people might not know this, but you know, we've been using machine learning for a long time, and mostly in the domains in risk management, so around fraud detection, prevention, credit risk, and a little bit in AML as well. And we've been having machine learning models for like 20 years, but you know, we don't do a good job in marketing machine learning because banks, you know, we're not supposed to market ourselves as a machine learning company or an AI company, but you know, now with the whole emphasis and with the advancements of algorithms, you know, the domains of AI adoption and AI use have expanded beyond just risk management into, you know, marketing and HR and operations, right? So that's why you would see a growth in the number of roles posted by all the banks in Canada. And, you know, these roles will be diverse. It would be data scientists and machine learning engineers and MLOps engineers. And now AI governance, AI risk specialists as well, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Aditya. Any other panelists want to add?
Sorry.
If you talk a bit, maybe they'll adjust on their side.
Sorry about that. I'll also echo Aditya. At Roche, being a healthcare company, we've been using AI as a capability for many years across a lot of our divisions, our initiatives. And so while there's still a need for hiring of data science roles, a lot of the capabilities are embedded in so many different roles across our organization. So even some of my colleagues here, they're involved in roles in supply chain management and our clinical operations. And so you won't necessarily see a title just as a data scientist, but a lot of the skills and the capabilities that we're looking are embedded in those job descriptions because it's just almost such a strong part of what we do as an organization. So strongly encourage as you're searching, yes, there's a plethora of data science roles, but increasingly as this field matures and with some larger companies, you'll see that these capabilities are needed and embedded in a lot of roles across the organization.
Thank you. And Patricia, you look like you want to jump in.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, this works. So there are a few roles that we heavily focus on hiring for. Back-end development, because of the deployment infrastructure that's necessary for the models that we build, because of all of the surrounding work that goes around the model deployment as well, so the pre-processing, the different data types that need to go through. Also data, that's where we have a fairly sizable data team. And the trick there is really the attention to detail and domain expertise that the data team provide for the data that are being annotated. And when it comes to machine learning, what we do is either train back-end developers to do machine learning because they already know how to code very well, or we take people who have deep domain expertise in language models specifically to come and help. And being a startup, what we'd look for is people who can show that they're ready to hit the ground running. We don't have too much time for training. We do some training, but time is of the essence.
Thank you. And so I think what we can learn here is that, well, there's 30 organizations here today. It sounds like just hearing from a few here, there's different curves, there's a whole bunch of different roles, and it's changing very, very fast. So when you're talking today to different companies too, I think it's something to explore. For each company, it's going to be pretty unique and pretty interesting. Okay, so I want to jump to our second question. Maybe I can ask the audience though. So audience, please let me know via your voice or your applause. Are you interested? Should I ask about tips for getting jobs in this space? Is anyone interested in that? Yeah? Okay, a little bit of interest. Okay, so we're going to ask about that. We talked a little earlier, we were saying right now, and maybe those in the audience see it when you're applying on LinkedIn or other platforms, and you see the number of applicants, and from what we're hearing from employers, it's a pretty high number, maybe across many other types of jobs too, but definitely in the field of AI. However, when we do talk to employers, they say there's a lot of non-qualified, non-vector affiliated enthusiasts who want to break into the field. So let's ask our panelists and talk a bit about this. Firstly, does that resonate? Is that their experience? And also, though, how those in the audience today, online and in person, can better stand out when they're applying so you can get past that stage and into the other recruitment stages. And we can start with Aimee. Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Adam. I think it's a great question. As a global company, our application rates are incredibly high, and this notion of AI enthusiast is really starting to spark a lot of discussions with our company. And I think it also goes along with a lot of the attention that this field is facing. But when you're applying for a job, really encourage that you be really specific. I mean, you're all studying a very specific area. Don't just say that you're studying AI or machine learning. Be specific. What domains, what areas, what courses are you taking? Show your GitHub repositories if that's what you're doing. Also show your active participation if there's things like hackathons that you've participated in, like active projects that can give potential employers a sense of your skill set, how you've worked, a lot of the technical capabilities and the toolbox that you use. So really encourage, not to be general. I think we tend to weed out those CVs pretty quickly. We want to see more and more specifics of your skills, your experience, and you need to be able to demonstrate and translate that in both your cover letters and your CVs.
Thank you, Aimee. Anybody else want to?
I'll jump in a little bit there. I think just to add on the technical side, what Aimee was saying on, show your GitHub repo, in the context of employers getting thousands of applications, many of them from people from very disparate areas. And maybe that's you. Maybe you started your career in economics and then you shifted into a technical discipline for master's and you went to a vector accredited or recognized program or something like that to get those skills. That's great. But you really need to demonstrate that shift, right? You need to have something tangible that you can see, because there are lots of people that say, oh, I did an undergrad in something completely unrelated, or I did some random online certificate and now I want, a job as an AI researcher, engineer, or whatever. You need to really show what you've done, and I would also add, the biggest challenge from my perspective and in my experience today is not somebody, training the top performing model on some data set that you downloaded from Kaggle, where the metrics and the data is already nicely set up and curated for you. It's really taking some real problem with real data that's going to be messy and it's not going to be obvious how to solve it, and applying AI tools to it. And so demonstrating that you're capable of that is going to get you a long, long ways.
Nice. Hearing a lot of showing what you've done versus what you can do. I think I'm hearing it in terms of the theme. Patricia, you look like you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, there are a few other things. Read the instructions on the application thoroughly. I will not look at applications or have the team look at applications that haven't followed the instructions. Make sure that your application is high quality. If you think that, if you would judge yourself for hiring you if you read the application, maybe rework the application. One example is that I get very often are ChatGPT generated cover letters, which is absolutely fine if you edit it afterwards. However, the kinds of cover letters that I get are very clear, clearly non-specific. These are my skill sets with very generic information. Show in your cover letter how you've demonstrated that those are your skill sets. So very much in the how show what you do segment there. And other examples are all in the applications that we put, we'll ask people to put their favorite pie in the application. And so I get these very flamboyant descriptions of their mother baking pie and they're getting the smell of the pie in the morning and it's a fresh cherry pie or whatever. That's clearly written by ChatGPT. So avoid those things. And then nothing goes a longer way than having someone in network recommend you. So make sure that whatever work you're doing right now, you're doing it to the best of your abilities and you are working well with your colleagues.
Great advice. Okay, did you want the last word, Aditya, or what do you think?
Maybe I'll just add a little bit on sound fundamentals. So, it's important to have fundamentals like really well honed in probability, statistics, linear algebra, right? If you have strong foundations, you can build on those foundations and learn the advanced concepts, but having sound foundations is the most important thing to have. And, I don't know if this rule exists, but I guess I'll make it up. But if you can answer 3 whys or 5 whys, then that means that you have good foundations. So if someone asks you why, and you're able to answer all those whys sequentially, then that's good. That means that your foundations are strong, right? So not just like, it's not about function calling. It's about understanding like why this particular algorithm is best for this particular use case and this particular business problem, right? And what are the pros and cons? Why is it better than the other one? And again, it's not about maximizing a particular metric like you would in Kaggle, but to your point, it's about knowing even the pros and cons of the algorithm itself, explaining it. Yeah.
So a lot of good advice here. And a reminder to everyone, in just a little bit, there's going to be 2 rooms opening on the other side with a lot of companies and a lot of potential to practice everything that you've just heard. So just something to keep in mind that you're talking or you're hearing from people that have seen a lot of resumes, seen a lot of people, and know what they're talking about. So good to keep this advice in mind in the real world. So the next couple of questions I want to go through now, going to very specific experiences from our panelists. And the first I want to start with is Patricia, because I want to ask a bit about the startup scale-up perspective. And from those who recall Patricia's bio as the CEO and co-founder of a startup, a great perspective to answer this. So we heard from the report, which was a survey of different employers, talking about how startups tend to need more senior talent, and that's not all the case all the time, but we're talking just generalities in terms of a large number of startups and scale-ups surveyed. So wondering, Patricia, if you can comment based on your experience of private AI, maybe first if that resonates, and also if there's advice, particularly when applying to startups and scale-ups, what those in the audience can keep in mind, or even through the recruitment process.
I think one benefit of joining a startup is that you get to dip your toes in a lot of ponds, and being very mindful about how it is that you are perceiving things that could be better, how it is that you are telling people within the organization that things could be better, or in how we can improve a particular process. That you don't have to be particularly senior to understand pain points within the organization. You might be feeling them yourself. You might be able to find solutions yourself. But it's that proactivity that's really important for junior roles, and it can be. It can be something that it comes from asking a lot of good questions, or even a lot of just general questions. But it's also about that curiosity. If you don't have that curiosity and you just want something that is a 9-to-5 job that's going to get you a paycheck, I don't recommend joining a startup. If you're particularly senior and have a really, really good skill set that matches that startup, it might work as an advisory position or as a consultant role, but for a full-time position, you need to be generally hitting the ground running, or very curious, very adaptable, pinpointing mistakes that need to be fixed. And the way that you could showcase in your applications could be getting a recommendation from somebody that you've worked with, talking about how you've showcased these skill sets within your previous roles as well.
Amazing, thank you. And also I should keep in mind too, for the audience, we're going to have a Q&A session after. So if there's any particular points here that you hear that you want to find out more about too, we're going to have some time dedicated to that as well. I want to ask now and zoom in, this is for Aditya. We talked a bit earlier about AI governance and ethics. And one of the findings of the report was that this is still a relatively small number of job postings when you look at the whole number of AI-related roles, but it's growing quite fast. 26% growth was what the report noted. So what I want to find out here, so Aditya's working in this area, we want to understand a bit more about what do the emerging career opportunities in this space actually look like, what skills and backgrounds are particularly valuable, and just to give the audience a bit of a picture to what does this look like at CIBC?
So AI governance is multidisciplinary, right? So it's either you have a team of individuals that come from different disciplines, or you have individuals that have a multidisciplinary skill set. It can be both or one or the other, but in the end, AI governance is about making sure that organizations are developing and deploying AI in a responsible and safe manner. So that requires, if you think about it, that requires the team to have people with data science, machine learning experience, so actually technical people. And it requires people from a legal background that can opine on laws and regulations. And it would require people that understand the company or the organization's governance and compliance processes as well. So you bring all these different skill sets together, and you're able to form sort of a holistic team that can execute on AI governance. So it is a it is a niche field, but a growing field, and it's very important, especially with generative AI, right? Because it comes with a delta of increased risks compared to, let's call traditional AI. And, these additional risks around copyright infringement and IP and confabulations or hallucinations and lack of explainability, all of that requires people from a data science technical background that can actually opine on how these risks can be mitigated or even identified and assessed. And legal people that can interpret the regulations and then work with the data scientists to basically come up with the design requirements. Because in the end, the proper way to develop AI is what we think, in our opinion, is governed AI by design or responsible AI by design. Just like you have privacy by design that Patricia is very experienced with, or security by design, it has to be governed AI by design, right? You have to bake in these governance and responsible AI principles into the design if you want to be robust and resilient to any upcoming regulations.
And I'll note one thing, and then if anyone wants to jump into on AI governance ethics, you can too, if it's relevant. But just something I heard there, which I think is super important, is that sometimes when you think of AI governance or safety, people may have impression that it's a side note, or it's a side to the main production of the models. But from what I heard there is that it's mission critical and beyond. Absolutely critical to everything, and at Vector we are absolutely of the same mind that it is a absolutely key priority, a prerequisite that this is safe and ethical AI. Before I move on, does anyone want to jump in, or should I continue?
Yeah, it's definitely a board level topic at many public organizations, and what we hear often from customers is AI governance is actually blocking, or not having proper AI governance in place yet is blocking their deployment of models into production. And so the longer time to market, the more expensive or the less money you make, and that's basically a very big problem for these organizations. But one thing, these are all very new areas, whether it's bias, AI security, privacy, explainability. And so it is ripe to have talent that is very curious come into it. And one way that you could make yourself stand out in this area is write about the research papers you're reading, write about the work that you're doing, write blog posts explaining the basics of these areas. So as you're learning, make your profile more known. And that is one of the best ways I found to find good roles for yourself afterwards.
And I'll add, just because this is tying into something that I feel like has kind of popped up a couple of times, is I think it may be somewhat underappreciated that AI right now, working in this space, I think everybody has to be at least a little bit interdisciplinary. And I think we all kind of recognize that, whether that's, companies are thinking about deployment and regulation and kind of ethics of deployment and release of certain types of models. And so you have companies that have philosophers and ethicists working in there. And it's expected that engineers will have to interact with these people, and that they have to interact with engineers to kind of understand how to do their job and guide the organization appropriately. And that we have technical people that have to work with product specialists and customers to kind of understand the problems, to figure out what the right way is to apply and deploy AI technologies. And I think that's something that it's a way to make yourself stand out, is if you can really demonstrate that you appreciate that kind of complexity of the role that you're going into. Maybe in some of the biggest organizations, you'll find roles for a software engineer that never has to look beyond, their Git code base. But I think, especially if you want to rise higher up, or you want to work in small, anything but those largest of companies and organizations, you really need to be able to demonstrate that you can appreciate the breadth of the problem that is AI deployment and productionization today.
If I can also add that at Roche, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do and what we're creating is for the betterment of patients. And so from the earliest of our research and early development, we're thinking about how do we take these discoveries, but get it through a very highly regulated market. We've chatted both being, both financial sector and then also in the healthcare sector, of very highly regulated sectors. You can't think of this as an afterthought. You need to be thinking about this throughout the entire development cycle and process. And increasingly at Roche, we're bringing together these teams that are very interdisciplinary, so that our development cycles can advance faster, and that the teams that are working with our regulators understand how to work with the regulatory environment as well, to make sure that what we're trying to create can ultimately impact the healthcare of a patient. So also encourage that there's different ways and different industries that are tackling this, and no industry is going to be isolated from needing to have incredibly strong governance and regulatory practices in this day and age.
Okay, so maybe if I sum it up, mission critical, emerging, very important, and look out for jobs in that space because it also sounds super interesting from all the different angles that we're describing. Okay, so the next one I have here for Aimee and Marcus, who are both individuals who have a connection both on the academic side as well as the industry side. And so we mentioned earlier, the report talks about the importance of non-technical skills. Maybe that's not surprising. Maybe it is because, you know, you would assume or a lot that heavy focus on the technical, but kept hearing again and again how important non-technical skills are. So for Aimee and Marcus, we want to talk about if there's particular skills that, from your experiences, you see as super valuable for students entering AI. And also, we want to get into the specifics. What does it look like? For example, if we say communication, what does that actually look like in the workplace? How does that show up? How does that impact things there? So maybe we'll start with Marcus and then go over to Aimee. And then Patricia, Aditya, if you want to jump in after, you can. But
So it's a great question, and I think it's an important one and maybe somewhat underappreciated, the non-technical skills. And I mean, again, how I answer this question depends a lot on who I'm talking to and what kind of roles or career goals they have. So, you know, I'll speak to it maybe a little bit from the perspective of, you know, graduate students, but also people looking to go into technical roles, you know, maybe research engineers or things like that. And I think communication really is the single biggest weak point that I consistently see in almost every single student. What communication looks like in this context is, you know, the ability to write and communicate effectively. You know, in companies, you don't just start a research project. You make a proposal and you get greenlit to go forward to do this project, or you need to convince, you know, somebody else in the organization that this is worth allocating engineering resources to. And so maybe that means a written proposal as well as maybe a short presentation that has to be delivered. In academia, obviously we have writing of papers, but even before that, you know, I always try to teach my students that writing is a part of the research process. It's not the end of it. It's a thing that you have to do throughout the whole process because it really helps you formulate and communicate your ideas both to yourself as well as to your colleagues and your collaborators and things like that. Speaking skills as well, you know, I think being able to get up in front of an audience, and it doesn't have to be, you know, 600 people in the Carlu, but being able to get up in front of 20 people in your office and present your work, whether that's what you've been doing recently, whether that's explaining, you know, the challenge that you've hit and why a project hasn't been able to deliver at a particular time, or explaining what you think is the possibility of some cool new feature, right? Being able to communicate that effectively. You know, nobody works in isolation in this space. And that means you're going to always have to work with people, whether those are teammates or people working in other parts of a business or an organization. So, yeah.
I can just say I can echo the communication piece. We've seen some amazing presentations at Vector at some of the most technically advanced models, but I just don't know what they do yet. Couldn't get that out of the presentation. So I absolutely echo.
And I'll add to that, by the way, it's also one of the easiest ones to practice, believe it or not. And because writing is a thing that, you know, write a blog. Doesn't matter if anybody reads it. Does not matter at all. Just write one just because. I say this not having written a blog, but it's an easy thing to do. You can start it tomorrow, right? You know, give presentations to your friends. Just be like, hey, I'm gonna, you know, tell you about this cool thing that I've been working on. What do you think? Right? These are things that you can practice. You can find opportunities out there, and oftentimes, just the practice of getting up there and doing it will be valuable.
Thanks. And just echoing on what Marcus was saying is, it's not to underscore the need to be a good team player. In our organization, you know, we're a massive global organization, but you are always working in teams. You're reshuffling and moving. Your team composition is, you know, sometimes data scientists, engineers, but then also we're bringing in, you know, our business colleagues, sometimes our finance and compliance. So you're going to be working with people with diverse backgrounds, diverse expertise, but at the end of the day, you're always working together to try and develop and push forward a product. So just being able to constantly work on those skills, understand how, you delivering a piece is ensuring success for an entire project. And so those are also the things that we're constantly looking at of, how do you relate to one another? Being part of, diverse teams is also a really great opportunity to consistently learn. There's a lot of learning that you've all done through, over your courses and your undergrad and graduate degrees, but coming into industry, you're going to be learning from, your colleagues and the experiences that they've had. And so just know that you're not, alone, but you also need to show up and deliver on your parts of the project as well.
Thank you. See Patricia.
So that resonates a lot, and when you were talking, Marcus, it was bringing it back to a lot of the presentations that our team puts forward to start new initiatives within the company, and it is really important to explain why it is that you're doing it. So, Simon Sinek's Start With Why. It's not just about companies, right? It's about the project that you're building. It's about the paper that you're writing. And I would actually argue that that is a very difficult muscle to train. And the more you train it, the better. So whether it's a piece of code that you're writing, whether it is a paper that you're writing, a blog post you're writing, start thinking about the why. Start describing that first. And that's a good way to train the muscle. But if you care about impact, that is the way to go.
So some great tips here in terms of communication, in terms of teamwork, which from someone who's visited the Roche office, you can feel the teamwork when you walk in the door. I definitely feel that. And
You're always welcome.
yeah, and the why, which private AI, I feel like, has a very strong why that as an organization. Okay, so I think we are now going to go over to the question and answer period to allow everyone here and online to ask any questions they have. So do we have a question? Looking around, I see a hand up.
Hi, hello. So my name is Yunrong. I'm come from U of T Rockman MMA. So one of the things I want to ask is how you would recommend us to balance our business ability and our technical ability in our resume to actually show that we have the ability to tackle a question in data problem and turn into like meaningful business insight, because it's kind of like a follow-up question to the communication and teamwork skills you previously mentioned of. So I was wondering, like, if you are hiring a data scientist, what kind of the percentage you want to see in their resume to like trade-off between business skills and technical skills, and how should us actually show in resume that we have these skills and to tackle a question and communication?
So would it be fair, there's a bit of an echo, would it be fair to say your question and the trade-off between business and technical skills, percentage-wise importance level?
Actually, in resume, how do we show we have this kind of ability, and what is the trade-off between the communication skills, business skills, teamworking skills, and the actual technical skills we need to have to as a data scientist?
Okay. Anyone? Patricia, you have your... Yeah.
I think it vastly depends on which role you're applying to. For the communication skills, that will be important regardless of the role. You could showcase that through your cover letter. You could showcase that through listing presentations that you've done, for example, in your resume. But I would, for example, not expect my machine learning engineers or back-end developers to have business skills. But if somebody's applying for a product position, that's when you expect them to have some business skill. And for that, it's curiosity, diving deep into how people are using the product. And you do need presentation skills. You do need ways to convince not only the organization to follow a product roadmap that you have in mind, because generally you don't have the direct control of the engineering team. You have to influence the engineering team to do what you're saying. So the way that you'd showcase that is potentially by showing what kind of code that you built to address a particular pain point that you saw in the market, and how you could talk a little bit about how you discovered that pain point, how you talked to the potential users before building what you built, for example.
Sure. Thank you.
I would also just add real quick that I often hear students talk about technical skills and non-technical skills as if they're somehow diametrically opposed to one another, or that they're somehow independent of one another. And I would also just push back on that notion a little bit. I actually think the non-technical skills actually will typically make you better at the technical pieces as well. You know, you try to write explaining what a piece of code does and you realize you have a bug because you can't actually explain it and you don't know why, right? That sort of, you know, there's not a trade-off, right? But I mean, if the question is how do you present it, yes, of course, you tailor it to the job and the skills that they're really looking for. And I think especially in this space where job titles don't tell the whole story, there are not standard definitions of what is a data scientist and what do they do, right? Every organization has a slightly different notion of what that is and what their roles and responsibilities were. And so you really have to tailor your applications to the jobs you're going for.
Thank you, Marcus and Patricia. I see we're in the minus. Do we want to do one more question? One more? Yeah, let's do it. Okay, I'm pointing over here. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Harsh, and I am pursuing my master's program in data science from University of Guelph. So the question I want to ask is that if we are targeting a job in a bank as a data scientist or data engineer, what should be our plan of action? Because the resources on the internet are enormous, but the people don't know where to start off. So that's what my question is. What should be our plan of action to target a bank as a data scientist or data engineer?
Okay, so I will just, because it's a bit of an echo, but what I got, if you want to work at a bank, what's the action plan? Yeah? There's a couple people who can, there's one who I think is the best shot, but some who have worked also at banks. Yeah. How does he get a job? What's the best shot?
Action plan to, I mean, like I said, banks, you know, they would have a diverse set of roles that would be in the discipline of data science and machine learning. So, you know, right now you could see roles advertised for applied researchers, data scientists, machine learning engineers, and now AI risk management or AI governance as well. So it depends on, you know, what I would recommend that people start off with, you know, data scientist role first, right? And not apply directly to, you know, an AI risk management role, for example, because for that you would need previous data science experience, right? So I would recommend people start off as a data scientist or an applied researcher if you have a PhD and you want to just focus on research. ML engineer is another good option, or ML ops engineer rather, is another good option if you want to emphasize your engineering skills and your sort of not so much like designing the algorithm and developing the model, but how to put it into production. So if you understand the technology stack pretty well and want to focus on the software aspects a little bit more, then an ML ops engineer is a better role. But yeah, I mean, the action plan depends on what role you want to apply to and what's your skill set.
Thank you, sir.
And I'll add one thing. Across the road here, across the hallway, there's all of the big banks in there, including CIBC and others in the booths, so definitely talk to them. And there's a whole bunch of other companies, if you don't want to work for a bank or you want to have other options too, they're opening up. There's a lot of companies around to talk to here, so please make use of that too. But thank you for your question. Can everybody give a big round of applause for our panelists? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's not easy always to be in front of a big crowd in a big venue, so thank you so much. And I'm going to